so we can break our fast.
Yeah, that's true.
I
The blood
will.
are calling. So today we'll talk about blood pressure.
Fasting and blood pressure, to be exact, because generally your doctor tells you about blood pressure medication, but doesn't tell you about lifestyle changes. And if he or she does tell you about lifestyle changes, they hardly ever tell you about fasting and how that affects blood pressure. We will discuss that. Let's get started. Here is a picture of us before super fasting and a picture of us after super fasting. One can easily see the difference. In me, it's pronounced, but in you, it's not quite as pronounced. And why is that?
Why is that? Because you were much better than I was, I guess. It's easier.
Don't
easier
hold back.
To see the
Just, say what's on your mind. Yeah, I was a lot fatter than you. I had a lot more weight to lose. You were relatively
and probably for men, it's easier to lose weight, gain muscles than women because of our different body structures. That's what I saw.
That is one of the unfortunate truths about humanity, the human condition. And we'll have to do a podcast on that particular topic, how it's easier for men to lose weight and gain muscle, and how frustrated you were with it.
Exactly. I will have a lot to complain about in that one.
We are currently fasting. So I'm drinking my coffee. I've had water. We're going to have tea later. So on our fasting days, we can have water, coffee, and tea. Black coffee. Or just plain tea and plain water. We have had over 5 years of fasting and coaching experience. We've helped people with fasting. We've helped people lose weight and get healthier. This podcast will help motivate the viewers to start fasting and start getting healthy.
And totally change their life.
Totally change their
brand new life. Brand new, happy and healthy life in front of them.
And between the before and after pitch, I mean, the before, we thought we were happy. I mean, we were sitting there at a famous beer house, Brauhaus, however you say it in German, in China. And so we were sitting there eating German food, sausages and sauerkraut and potatoes and beer, and we were perfectly happy. We thought we were happy. And then afterwards, with after the super fasting, losing all the weight, getting healthy, gaining back our health in many ways, we became happier, and we understood.
If you look at those two pictures, we are eating out, we're dining out, right? Now, what's the difference? On the left one, the one that we were fat, that's basically our everyday life. So when we had chance, we'll go out and enjoy food, right?
If we didn't go out 3 or 4 times a week, and possibly every day of the week, I wasn't happy. I wanted to be at those restaurants. I wanted to drink beer. I wanted to eat unhealthy food.
Yes, but on the other one, after we super fasting, we only do that when we on our splurge day. So that's one difference. Number two, before we super fast, the food we order most based on meat stuff. After super fasting, even we eat out in the restaurant, we try to order vegetables or whole food, plant-based kind of
fruit.
Kind of food. Yes, fruit. This kind. We always have choice what we choose for, even for birthday, what we choose to eat for the birthday, because it's about celebration. What you celebrate, your health.
Feel free to order the ebook from kobo.com. If you purchase the book, I will give you 1 hour of personalized consultation free to get you set up with fasting, to know what to expect, how to get started, how to even talk to yourself to get started. And we've talked about that in the Negative Self-Talk podcast. If you like the video, hit the subscribe button. And if you have a question or a comment, feel free to write that down, or you can actually, on certain venues, you can leave a voice comment, and we'll feature those comments and questions on a future podcast. All right, and there's the link, hypertension, which is also known as high blood pressure. And it's also called the silent killer.
That's interesting. Why it's silent and it's a killer? The most important thing is why it's a killer.
Why is it a killer? It's silent because people don't realize that they have high blood pressure. You can have the highest blood pressure and not have any symptoms or feelings about it whatsoever. And we're going to talk about how do you measure it? How do you tell if your blood pressure is high, low, or normal? And it's a killer because hypertension or high blood pressure is not actually a disease. It's a symptom of other problems that you have, other diseases that you have. And these other diseases kill you.
So it's
silent
more like
killer.
a potential danger there.
Absolutely. One of the factors of hypertension is family history. And both of my grandfathers died at the age of 58 of cardiovascular disease. And of course, no one ever said that they had high blood pressure. Nobody was ever worried about their high blood pressure. But I guarantee you that both of these men had high blood pressure, and they had it for decades without even knowing it. This is why it's the silent killer. It's something that you really, really need to understand and know what your blood pressure is.
So now we know why it's silent and why it's a killer, basically. Oh my God, all of this.
Yes, here are the consequences of high blood pressure. The picture there is an old blood pressure machine that you went into your doctor to get your blood pressure taken. I remember these machines.
I remember there's like mercury going up.
And these are the problems with having high blood pressure. They damage your blood vessels. They can then damage your heart, your brain, your kidneys, your eyes. These are huge problems because once the damage happens, it's difficult to near impossible to reverse. And then it can lead to heart disease, heart attack, heart failure, like my grandfathers, strokes, peripheral arterial diseases. So it's not just your heart. Like we go down here and we can see the aortic aneurysm. So the aorta of your heart, basically because of the pressure, just bursts and then you bleed out internally. That's almost instant death. Nothing you can do about it. And no way you could save somebody who has an aortic aneurysm. But you can also have problems with your peripheral, like your feet, your hands, your arms, your legs, and the vascular disease that high blood pressure comes along with or helps to cause can cause problems for your limbs. Kidney disease, chronic kidney disease, which would lead to dialysis. You might have to be on dialysis. Vascular dementia. Now this is where we get into the brain because your arteries harden and that's what increases the blood pressure. Then you don't get enough oxygen and blood to the brain, and then you have cognitive impairment. So you actually go down a few notches with IQ. That would be the least problematic. Maybe Alzheimer's, dementia where you lose your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, and these are all things that can happen to you all of a sudden. You don't realize that it's coming, but if you had been taking your blood pressure and you knew about blood pressure and you knew it was high for all those decades, you'd be able to do something about it.
Yeah, true. Now, let's go back to the basic question. What causes high blood pressure?
Well, that's an interesting question. And it's something that doctors and nutritionists aren't going to tell you, or they might mention it, but then they don't tell you what to do about it. Only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy, which means 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. And that means only 1 in 10, about 1 in 10 people are healthy.
So what is metabolically healthy? Because when we talk about healthy, people just talk either healthy or not healthy. Why we have this category of metabolically healthy,
We have a new syndrome or disease that has just come out in the last decade, and it's called metabolic syndrome. So that if you have this, then you're metabolically unhealthy. If you have any of these problems, you're metabolically unhealthy. And the things that contribute to metabolic syndrome are obesity, hypertension or high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, blood sugar problems like type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, or even hypoglycemia. I had hypoglycemia before I started fasting. And I would get hangry when my blood sugar would go down. Blood sugar problems, blood lipid problems, which is just the fat or the cholesterol in your blood, LDL, HDL. And then smoking is, if you're a smoker, you're not metabolically healthy. America is the only place, I've seen this in many articles, I've seen this in videos where somebody will say, yeah, well, he was 100 pounds overweight. He had high blood pressure. He had a heart attack at one point, and he had type 2 diabetes. And his LDL was high, his cholesterol was high, and he smoked like a chimney. But other than that, he was perfectly healthy.
And perfectly
healthy. You just gave the exact definition of unhealthy, and then you said, but he was perfectly healthy. And then they say stuff like, so I don't know why he died. I don't understand why he died. He died because of all of these problems, because he was unhealthy, metabolically unhealthy. So 1 in 10 are metabolically healthy. Now, you and I are metabolically healthy, and we went to the hospital to get our blood work done, and we had sonograms on our internal organs, and I felt like I was getting a pregnancy test, because we were doing that. They did the squirt of the gel, and they did the sonogram around on my belly and that kind of stuff. But we were perfectly healthy. As a matter of fact, the doctor seemed disappointed that we were so healthy when she was explaining to us our results. Because of fasting, because of a whole food plant-based diet mainly, because of exercise, we are metabolically healthy. This is important. And so now we get into what causes high blood pressure, because it's the same thing that causes metabolic syndrome. If you're overweight, if you have blood sugar problems, obesity, if you have blood lipid problems with your cholesterol, if you smoke, if you don't exercise, if you don't eat right, you're probably going to have high blood pressure. And I was diagnosed with high blood pressure in my 30s, my 40s, and into my 50s. Before I fasted, I had high blood pressure. I thought I could control it with lifestyle changes. But again, I didn't know what those lifestyle changes were. But fasting, whole food plant-based diet, exercise, and then a few other things that will help you with metabolical health will lower your blood pressure.
Okay.
What do you understand causes high blood pressure?
The most important thing is the diet, is the lifestyle. It's all about what you eat. Then
it's about what you eat.
Then the habits. Do you do things to harm your health? Smoke? And then the last one is the exercise.
That is correct. So if you're eating at restaurants a lot, if you're eating fast food, if you're eating processed foods, which has a lot of sodium, if you're consuming a lot of salt, this contributes to high blood pressure. But you wouldn't want to just say, well, I'll reduce my salt. But diet is the number one thing. Really, diet is the number one thing. Fasting helps to bring it about. Now, of course, there are things that are associated with fasting that you can't get by eating constantly. So I still recommend fasting and diet and exercise. And if you do those three things, there's no way you're going to have high blood pressure.
Yeah, also in China, we have a very similar term for metabolically healthy, I think. I think they call it sub-health, which means you're not really, really healthy. You're sub-health.
Yes, sub-health. That's a great term for it because you are not healthy. Look, metabolic syndrome means nothing to most people. What is it? You have no idea. In America specifically, but also in the West, where big pharma is king, they're in control of everything that's going on, especially right now. They want to confuse people because the less confused you are, the more you understand, the healthier you will be, and the less you'll need pharmaceutical products. So conversely, the more confused you are, the unhealthier you'll be, and the more you'll rely on pharmaceuticals. So metabolic syndrome, it's a term to confuse. But in China, in the East, sub-health. What does that mean? It means you're not healthy. But metabolic syndrome, it just sounds less harmful than sub-health.
Yeah.
How do you know what is normal blood pressure? How do you know if you have a problem with blood pressure or not? So we have this chart by age, and we have this kind of older, more colorful is the better blood pressure chart. But this one by age, they have a minimum, they have normal, and they have maximum. The problem with this is the normal. They want you to think that anywhere from the minimum to the maximum is normal, and it's not. Because if you look at the one on the right here, normal is 120 over 80. And what does that mean? We say 120 over 80. We use this systolic or upper number over the diastolic and lower number. And basically the systolic, the higher number, is the pressure when your heart beats. Okay, when your heart clamps down and pumps blood, of course, the pressure on your arteries and vessels is higher. So that's how you remember it. It's when it beats. And then the lower number is when it's at rest. So when the heart's at rest. Normal for the heart beating, the pressure is under 120. And when the heart is at rest, under 80. And that's normal. And then the lower range of that is 90. When your heart beats, the pressure on your vessels of 90, and then 60 when your heart is at rest. So 90 over 60 to 120 over 80 is normal blood pressure. But 120 over 80, look at this. So maximum for blood pressure is for age. By the time you are 14 to 19 years old, a blood pressure of 120 over 81 is okay. If you're not over that, then it's okay for 14 to 19-year-olds. This is a misleading blood pressure chart. It is made to keep you confused. You can look at this and you still won't know what's normal and what's not. And even on the normal blood pressure, by the time you are at 20 to 24-year-old, 120 over 79 or 120 over 80, that's normal, but it wouldn't be really for these people. And over 120 and over 80, you're going to have pre-hypertension. And once you get over that, you need to start worrying. You need to start doing something. The CDC recommends that you get your blood pressure checked at the doctor's. Well, if you wait until then, how often do you go to the doctor? Once, maybe twice a year, more if you're sickly, but you'll get your blood pressure checked then. But what about the rest of the time? You have no idea what it is. 140 over 90 is usually when they start suggesting medications. Doctors will give you medications. That's why the CDC wants you to go to the doctor, because the CDC is basically a shill organization for the medical profession and big pharma. So they're going to tell you, go to the doctor. Don't do it at home. And if they do tell you to do it at home, they're not going to really tell you how to do it. So you're on your own. And when you're on your own, you're going to be confused because nobody tells you. But we're here to tell you. So that's a good thing. By the time you get to 160 over 100, hypertension stage 2, well, you could get to hypertension stage 3. Here's the problem. It's an emergency. It's a medical emergency if you're at 180 over 110. You need to go to the doctor immediately if your blood pressure is that high. And certainly by the time it's over 160, by the time you're in stage 2, you're having problems. You're damaging internal organs. And so you want to start worrying about it in pre-hypertension. And what do? You change what you eat. You change your habits. You lose weight. You exercise.
And also you have to monitor your blood pressure often.
That's right. So we bought a blood pressure machine in China, and it has Chinese writing on it, but we know what the symbols means. We bought that actually after our blood pressure normalized with fasting and eating a whole food plant-based diet and exercising. We monitored our blood pressure. We measured it every day to see what our normal blood pressure is.
And how fasting changed our blood pressure also.
How fasting changed it. I was in hypertension, pre-hypertension, and stage 1 hypertension in my 30s and 40s. I would have gone into the stage 2.
The dangerous one.
in my 50s for sure. And then, like I said, my health habits were basically the same as my grandfather's. And I was planning on dying at about 58 if I didn't change something. Now that we know what our basic blood pressure is, we check it about once a week. So if you're in pre-hypertension or higher, you should be checking it every day.
Awesome.
If your blood pressure is normal, once a week is fine, just to make sure that it's not too high.
Mm-hmm. Another thing about the chart I want to ask, seems like when you get older and older, it's inevitable and it's acceptable that your blood pressure should be higher. Look at this chart, right? So is it true?
They want you to believe that as you get older and older, high blood pressure is inevitable.
It's normal.
The problem with that is the people who are telling you that are the used car salesmen telling you that the car is perfectly, it's in top shape condition, it's wonderful, you're not going to have any problems, and they're selling you a lemon. So this is the lemon, the inevitability of growing old and getting high blood pressure. Well, if they can convince you that it's inevitable and that there's nothing you can do about it, then they can convince you that by the time you're up into stage 1, hypertension stage 1, you need medication. And then they get millions and millions of people on medication. The pharmaceutical companies are going to make a lot of money. So no, it's not inevitable, and I am living proof. You are living proof, because you should have high blood pressure too. According to this chart,
yes.
You are, how old are you? You're 40 to 44. God. So you should minimum have 112/79, maximum have 137/87. If you were 137/87, there'd be no problem with that. And 125/83, which is above normal into pre-hypertension already, you should just live with. That's normal. Don't worry about it. Just go to the doctor once or twice a year, get your blood pressure taken, and then when your blood pressure has evolved to the point where you need to take medication, they'll say, okay, well, you need to take medication now, and you'll get on medication and you'll be on medication for the rest of your life.
Another thing is, it seems like high blood pressure problem happens to young people more and more now in this society. Okay, more young people start to have the high blood pressure problems.
You have a society where 70% of the population is overweight or obese, and that includes children. So now you have a problem with children having high blood pressure, and what they want to tell you is that that's okay. Yeah, by the time you're 19 years old, high normal is fine. So by the time you're 24, 132/83, which is pre-hypertension, is fine. Yeah. It's fine. If you just look at this particular age blood pressure chart, you'll think that's fine. So you go to the doctor at 24 years old and they say, oh, your blood pressure is 132/83. And they go on. You think, oh, if you look at this chart, you go, oh, well, yeah, I'm okay. Because it can be that high and I can be okay. You can't. You have a problem if your blood pressure is high. So we have these young people with high blood pressure, and quite frankly, they've done studies where they've looked at the arteries of 10-year-olds in America, and they found plaque buildup that they would expect, 50 years ago, that would have been in a man of 70, and here's a child of 10 having this arterial sclerosis and plaque buildup. They're already headed toward a heart attack. They already have high blood pressure. No, it is unacceptable for any child to have high blood pressure, because if we go back, children who are metabolically unhealthy, that's their parents' fault, because they've let the child get fat. They probably have hypertension. They're starting with cardiovascular disease. Type 2 diabetes used to be an old man's disease, but now younger kids are getting type 2 diabetes because of all the sugar that they have in their, and all the fat that they eat from fast food and processed foods. So they have the blood lipid problems already started, the cholesterol. The only thing they're not doing at that young age is smoking. Who knows, that might be next. So it's not normal for kids to have high blood pressure, and it's not inevitable that older people will have high blood pressure.
Yeah. So many young people, they put a lot of time in working. So number one, mentally, they're under a lot of stress. Number two, they are always busy, so they don't have time to work out. They don't have time to cook healthy food for themselves. So they order, deliver food. So they basically, every meal is high oil, high sugar, high salt, unhealthy food. I think those are also reasons to give them high blood pressure.
Absolutely. And you're thinking of the pandemic, where people order out and have food delivered. I'm always thinking pre-pandemic, where these kids are getting McDonald's every day. And their parents might take them to McDonald's for breakfast, Burger King for lunch, and Wendy's or Subway for dinner. And Subway, they think, oh, this is healthy. It's not. It is not healthy. It's full of fat, sugar, salt, oil, sugar, salt. So it's not good. If we're going to look at this blood pressure by age, we really need to look at the minimum. Okay, the minimum. So we have, by the time you're 6 to 13 years old, you're at the low end of normal. And by the time you're 60 or 64, you're at the high end of normal. I still don't think it's inevitable. I'm 57, so I'm here. Okay, so my blood pressure should be 118 over 82 minimum. And if you look at this particular chart, 118 over 82 minimum, 144 over 90. I'm actually okay to be in the stage 1, hypertension stage 1 at this point, max, and I'm okay because that's just normal, right? It's just the way it is. It's inevitable.
Acceptable, right?
Yeah. So I think if you just look at the minimum, you can use this chart, just cover up the normal and the maximum, because you're unhealthy if you're at the normal and the maximum. And that makes sense, because this is my problem with medical science, scientific studies on nutrition and medicine and this kind of stuff, is that they do the studies on normal people, and normal people eat unhealthy 3 meals a day, plus snacks. And they say, oh, well, here's what's normal, because the average person is like this. Now, the average person is unhealthy. So when you hear that, you need to say, okay, well, that's the normal unhealthy person. So what about healthy? And then, of course, the chart on the right is really the chart that you should be using. And I think I used a chart like this in my book. If you think this video helped you, hit the subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment sections or leave a voice comment if possible, and we will feature it on our next podcast. You can find us on SuperFastSuperFit.com, Facebook, email superfastsuperfit@gmail.com, LinkedIn, M. David Peterson, Instagram, M. David Peterson, Twitter, M. David Peterson, and SuperFast 100M. And then YouTube, the channel is SuperFast SuperFit, so you can see all of our videos. Subscribe to the channel.
I hope that today's podcast helped you a little bit, and I hope that you learn something from it and start to really consider to change your lifestyle to get much healthier. We can always be healthier than we are now.
Next week, we're going to be discussing splurge meals and splurge days.
Can't wait for the next topic. I'm very interested.
All right, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Keep healthy.
Bye.
Bye. Buy the book.
Keep fasting.